If the draft were held tomorrow, I could tell you who Orlando Magic fans would pick, why the Walter Clayton obsession is not out of pocket today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to chat about Walter Clayton. He is the favorite target for the Orlando Magic in this draft, why the Magic are focused on him, and the other guards that fit their bill. Be getting some draft talk today. We're going to get through some of my favorite prospects in this early part of my draft review and who the Magic could trade up to get. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. If you're one of our everydayers, we're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Prizepicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. I have been getting this message probably since the beginning of the NCAA tournament. And look, you interact with me. I don't like to commit to things. I don't like being freezing cold taked. I have freezing cold takes. Don't worry. I'm not someone that likes to say things hard and fast, but I was pretty cold on Walter Clayton. I'm not going to lie about it. A little small. Didn't really fit what the Magic are doing. Not truly a point guard. There are things to like, and I would tell people like, look, right now, I'm a little bit behind in my draft study. I don't follow the Gators as much as I used to. I watched a lot of their games this year, but I don't follow them as much as I used to. I get the appeal, but right now, just looking at the early draft boards, he is early second round, mid-second round. It's going to be hard for him to get to the first round. Then he has this wild NCAA tournament that he had, and it is truly wild. Winning the Gators several games late. Getting them to the national championship game, winning the national championship, did not play well in the national championship game, but still had some big moments. Getting them to that point. And all of a sudden, yes, there is real draft buzz for him. And you have to, and now we're obviously in the draft process. Clayton is a senior. He's not going anywhere. And it sure feels like Walter Clayton is at the top of every Magic fan's draft board. I'd still have him in the late teens, early 20s on my big board. I'm still working on that for my Patreon page for my subscribers. So subscribe now if you want to get that. Clayton is very clearly in play for the Magic at 25, if not at 16. I think 16 would be a little bit of a reach, but I've seen some mocks put him there at 16. And the Magic fans are obsessed. And that's cool. Like, be obsessed. There are a lot of things to like about Walter Clayton. Walter Clayton checks off a lot of boxes that the Magic need. He's not going to be your starting point guard. You're not drafting him to be a starter. But what do the Magic need? They need excellent three-point shooting. For his usage, he was around 40%. Let me get the exact number here. So hold on one second. Let me find my notes here. He made 38.6% of his three-point shots last year. What do the Magic need? They need a volume three-point shooter, 7.8 three-point attempts per game. They need a scorer, 18.3 points per game. That's obviously all not coming off of three-pointers. They need a playmaker and passer, 4.2 assists per game. It's not, all those stats are fine. You expect that. He's a star in college. He's going to get the big numbers. As I started doing a little bit more of a study on Clayton, what really began to sell me on him is his efficiency. Yeah, he posted a 56% effective field goal percentage. So effective field goal percentage, it just adds the added value of a three-point shot to your field goal percentage. So if you're shooting 33% from three, if you're 1 for 3 from three, that's like 1.5 2-point field goals. So you get like a half field goal make for every 3-pointer you make, and that gets added to your field goal percentage. On top of this, he has a 60.2% true shooting percentage. What's the big criticism of Paolo Banchero? It's that all these advanced numbers, his effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage especially, aren't particularly good. Even though he's a high usage player, which depresses his field goal percentage because he's taking tougher shots, Walter Clayton was doing that at Florida, but making them. And then at the end of the day, like, it's not the end-all be-all, but it's important that he stepped his game up in the NCAA tournament. In those 6 games, 22.3 points per game, 47.4% shooting, 20 for 46 from three, a 60.5% effective field goal percentage, 69.6% true shooting percentage. And that's including a 3 for 10 showing, 11.3 for 10 showing in the national championship game against Houston, but he made some big plays in that game. As Todd Golden put it on FanDuel's Run It Back show yesterday, Walter Clayton is a winner. And there's a reason why teams love grabbing guys from state championships. Teams understand what a winner looks like and what a player who's all about winning looks like. And honestly, like, Walter Clayton's probably going to rise on some draft boards because of his interviewing. I can understand. I look at all these numbers. I watched him play. You can understand why he is an obsession for Magic fans and why, yes, he should be on the Magic's radar. According to Todd Golden, the Magic like him plenty. So there is definitely a better than good chance that Walter Clayton, your favorite prospect, has a real opportunity to be drafted by the Magic at 16 or 25. Now, obviously, there's a lot that's going to happen before then. There's a lot of other moving parts of this draft. There's a chance the Magic don't pick anybody in this draft. I think they're going to trade one of the picks. I don't think they're going to trade both. It wouldn't surprise me if they consolidate the picks in some way. We'll talk about that trade-up option coming up here in a minute. But Walter Clayton is that guy. He checks off every box for the Magic. Well, shouldn't say every box. Because the one box he doesn't check off is his measurables. And look, he's an excellent shooter. Skill-wise, he does everything the Magic want. And that's good. And Magic at this point, as they're assessing this draft, they're not drafting, they're not drafting the high upside guy. They're looking for players who can contribute to their team and grow with their team immediately. But the Magic still have a style. They still have a way that they like to go about things. Clayton measured at the combine at 6'2" without shoes with a 6'4" wingspan. Unless he is replacing Cole Anthony, which, again, one of my things this summer is I think the Magic probably need to go find a Cole Anthony, upgrade someone who can do what Cole Anthony theoretically does, but more consistently. And that's not that is a knock on Cole. Love Cole to death. Cole Anthony's been played off the floor in the playoffs, and part of that is his size. Walter Clayton, sorry, I have a friend who's named Walker Clayton, so I'm always like very, very confused a little bit. Walter Clayton is small. He's bigger than Cole, but he's small. And that's kind of how this draft goes. Clayton checks a lot of boxes. And yeah, again, should be high on your boards. You should like him a lot. I like him a lot. But this is the problem with this draft. Every player that we're going to talk about, and we're going to do a little grab bag here in a minute. Every player that we're going to talk about has one flaw that makes him not quite the perfect fit. Walter Clayton is a perfect fit. He checks off all the skills that the Magic need. His one flaw is he's too small. He's small. And the Magic have to weigh how much that deficiency could override everything else. Because at the end of the day, what the Magic are looking for is a player who can contribute in the playoffs. So who else are the Magic looking for, and what are those flaws? Let's dive into our prospect grab bag coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Prizepicks. Basketball season is now at its peak. Only one game per day for the rest of the season. It stinks. We don't have any games on Saturday. That stinks. Gonna actually have to do. Oh, I actually do have plans for Saturday, so I'm okay with that. Now is the time to put your sports knowledge to work with Prizepicks, the top platform for daily fantasy sports. Prizepicks makes it easy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. Whether it's points, rebounds, or assists, you've got a shot to win up to 2,000 times your entry. Whether you're looking to get in on the action for the conference finals or for Game 7 on Saturday, whether you think Nikola Jokic is going to score more than 25 points or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander more than 30, you just make the prediction and make your group and watch it all happen. The app takes less than 60 seconds to use, and I love how you can mix and match basketball players with other sports like baseball or esports in the same lineup to keep the action going. And when you hit your picks, the payout hits fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. So we've talked a little bit about this. Like, we know what the Magic need. We know what the Magic are looking for in this draft process. They are looking for point guard, get another lead guard. Look, they're not looking for their starter in this draft. Unless we're going to talk some trade up options and some guys I like at the top of the draft who might be attainable. But the Magic are not looking for a star. They're not looking for a starter in this draft. They're looking for quality role players who can support their team, just like they're looking for that in the trade market. And obviously, there's a little bit of a balance going on. You don't want to draft something that you're going to grab in the trade market. If we're going to talk a little about this in a minute. If Tristan da Silva is someone that they're expecting to graduate into a bigger role, you're not going to draft a player that does what Tristan da Silva does or plays the same position. If you're planning on trading like a Jonathan, if Jonathan Isaac's on the move, you got to maybe use the draft to replace players that you might have to give up in some of those trades. But essentially what the Magic are looking for, they're looking for shooting. They're looking for attackers. The same things they're looking for everywhere. They need more offensive-minded players who can hold their own on defense. The defensive system and the culture is going to make players better defensively if they buy in. So you got to figure out if they're going to buy in on defense. You don't want a guy who doesn't care about defense. Like, again, I love this about Cole. I don't mean to keep bringing him up because we all see a little bit of the writing on the wall with him. Cole Anthony tries on defense. He may not be good. He may be targeted, but he tries. And that's why Cole Anthony still works for this team. Now, it doesn't work in the playoffs. You just bump into reality. The Magic need guys who will give that effort on defense because ultimately what we're thinking about is what's going to win in the playoffs. And obviously, like, the Magic need more shooting. So what are the options there? There is another guard option that we do have to talk about. And very similar to Walter Clayton, Jase Richardson, son of former Magic guard Jase Richardson. Jase Richardson is super dynamic. I really love Jase's ability to create his own shot off the dribble, which is a skill the Magic desperately need. He is excellent. He's a solid shooter, decent athlete. He's a better athlete finishing around the rim than Clayton, which is why Richardson is rated above Clayton on many draft boards. But ultimately, I don't think there's a significant difference between the two. My early look at Jase Richardson, I watched him a few times during the NCAA tournament, and I'm a Big Ten guy, so I watched Michigan State a little bit during the season as well. Richardson's shot isn't fantastic. It's certainly not as good as his dad's, but whose is? His shot isn't fantastic. And look, he had to be on the ball a lot at Michigan State. A lot of mid-range shots, a lot of settling for mid-range jumpers. So I like Jase Richardson a lot, but I have concerns with him. He shot 41.2% from three, but worked mostly in the mid-range, shooting 49.3% overall. So he's a good shooter. His ability to get to the rim at the NBA level, his size, he did not measure particularly well during the combine. His size are really concerning. If you're thinking point guard this draft, there are some options. Like Jase Richardson and Walter Clayton, they're not point guards, but they would play point guard. The other guards, the other kind of lead guards in this draft, all have like really huge flaws. Like, and they're all like, what's going to be really interesting about this draft is the Magic are going to have to fight the temptation to draft the guys they're used to drafting. You know, those kind of big mobile wings, those defensive wings. They're going to have to really resist the temptation to draft those guys instead of the players that they actually need. So like Nolan Traore, I'm a big fan of Nolan Traore. That kid is really good. He's put up some impressive numbers. He has really shined and shown out. He's really played better as the season goes on. His shot is still a huge question mark. Like a huge question mark. Igor Demon from BYU. 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" point guard. Great passer. Decent mid-range shooter. Like, I think he's a better mid-range shooter than people give him credit for. Cannot shoot a three worth a lick. He's willing to shoot them, which I think is the first step. Cannot shoot a three worth a lick. Ben Seraph. I like Ben Seraph a lot. I've described Ben Seraph when I've watched tape on him. Ben Seraph plays in Spain. When I've watched Ben Seraph play, he looks like Anthony Black with a mid-range jumper. His mid-range shot is super comfortable. Cannot shoot threes. Questionable effort on defense. These are the kind of the point guard options for the Magic. These are like the guys that are in the Magic's range at point guard, and they're all horribly imperfect. Like, look, I would say if it comes down to it, like Nolan Traore is going to be really hard to pass up on. He's 6'6", long arm, good defense, good feel for the game, good passer. Just the offense and shooting are just huge questions. And look, he has looked a lot better. Go watch some Nolan Traore highlights from the last week, especially. I think he had a 20, 22, and 25-point game. Made like 4 or 5 threes in one of those games. I think Nolan Traore, if the Magic are going to go for upside, Nolan Traore is the answer. But like I said, how similar is he to an Anthony Black? If you're drafting a Nolan Traore, if you're drafting a Ben Seraph, if you're drafting an Igor Demon, that means you're probably trading Anthony Black. That means you're giving up on Anthony Black and kind of starting over. If you're drafting a Walter Clayton or Jase Richardson, that probably means you're moving on from Cole Anthony. Like, you got to, like, look, there's a set rotation. You got to kind of fill out the rotation. The other players, there aren't a lot of just like straight shooters in this draft. Some people might say Danny Wolf. I'm out on Danny Wolf. Like, I have no interest in Danny Wolf. There are a lot of players that are just like, oh yeah, the Magic would draft this guy. There's a, Jonathan Isaac, Chumo, KK, Tristan Da Silva style players in this draft. I'm still a big fan of Nique Clifford. Nique Clifford finished last year for Colorado State, averaging 18.9 points per game, 9.6 rebounds, 4.4 assists per game, shot 37.7% from three. Raised pretty much all of those averages, was over 20 points per game during Colorado State's 10-game win streak to win the Mountain West Conference. Did not have like the biggest game in the first round in the NCAA tournament, but even though he wasn't shooting well, you could just feel his fingerprints all over the game. And that's something I really, really like. I really, really love that about him because, look, he's not going to have the ball in his hands. He can clearly attack a little bit off the dribble. Settled for mid-range jumpers. Can he create that shot in the NBA? I don't know. The three-point shot's got to be better, but defends, passes, rebounds. He finds ways to impact games. And, like, look, a lot of these guys are the stars on their college teams. You got to project what are they going to do when the ball's not in their hands. And so Nique Clifford is someone that I can look at and say, I know exactly what he's going to be when the ball's not in his hands. If he can make threes, if you have faith in his three-point shooting, that's a good spot. There are a lot of these kind of similar rangy wing players like that. And again, that's the question is, okay, if you're going to one of those guys, what do you do with Tristan Da Silva? How do you fit him into these plans? Does that mean you're kind of drafting a Jonathan Isaac replacement instead? These are all part of the considerations. UAB's Yaxel Lendeborg had a really strong combine from everything that I've heard and read. He averaged 17.7 points per game, 11.4 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. Not a shooter yet, but filling a stat sheet at 6'9", Magic love those kinds of players. St. Joseph's Rasheer Fleming, also a solid option. 14.7 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, shot 39% from three in his junior year on 4.5 attempts per game. Shooting's gotten better each of his 3 seasons in college. So seeing him, he's been kind of a riser in the late part of this draft process. I think he had a good combine as well. If the shooting is real and translates to the NBA, that's a positive sign for him. There are options. But look, unless you're a big Ryan Kalkbrenner fan or Danny Wolf fan, center's not on the table. You're looking at a lot of, in where the Magic are drafting, you're looking at a lot of imperfect point guards that do a lot of things that the Magic like, but aren't necessarily what the Magic need. And you're looking at a lot of these kind of rangy bigs that the Magic like, but probably have too many of, that don't feel the needs to push this team forward. And that's why Walter Clayton stands out. Because while he doesn't have the size the Magic like, he has all of those skills the Magic really like. And I didn't even get to know Asong. I think Asong's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if I pronounced it wrong. Who's just a mystery box of fun. The draft has a lot of opportunity. I would say this. I usually come into these processes down on the draft. I try to warn people this draft isn't great. I don't love all the players here. I'm still watching tape. I'm still forming final opinions on a lot of guys. My early look at this draft, I like where the Magic are picking. I think the Magic can get a quality player where they're picking and have options. Like I named 4, 5, 6 guys there. I'm cool with all those guys. There are reasons to like all those guys. I think the Magic have options in this draft. But the question is not about picking up talent anymore. It's about how can the Magic fit guys into a team that's growing and developing and building. And that, whenever you have 2 draft picks, you have to ask the question, what are your trade-up options? Who the Magic could be trading up to get, coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Look, there is nothing like the NBA playoffs. I missed it already 2 weeks ago, being in Boston, being in the Kia Center. The playoffs are just the absolute best. Honestly, I'm jonesing for them again. I understand why players are obsessed with them. They're just fun as fans. To be in an intense arena, to be in the pressure pack system, to have to try and figure out another team, it is the absolute best. And while the Magic are no longer playing, if you are on the road, getting ready, if you're on the road this summer looking for something to do, the playoffs are a great reason to travel. And Game Time is your ticket to the big game. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. There's a lot going on here in Central Florida still. We got Orlando City. We got the Orlando Pride. There is still plenty to do. There's plenty going on over at the Dr. Phillips Center. And if you hop on the Game Time app, you can get tickets to all of those events, whether it's a soccer game, whether it's the big soccer game we got going on at Camping World later this summer, whether it's concerts, whether it's theater. Game Time has you going. And with zone deals, they're offering 60% off in great sections. You can see the exact view from your seat before you buy, no surprises. And the app really makes it simple to find and locate the best deals. And with the Game Time guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal. If you find a better price in the same row and section, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. The NFL schedule just dropped, and you better believe I'm already looking at the fall calendar and picking which Bucks or Jaguars games. That's the beauty of being Orlando. We're close to 2 teams. You can hit. Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. If you've never used Game Time to grab NFL seats, now is the time. It's seriously a game day upgrade. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So we all understand the Magic are looking to win. Like, and typically when like a general manager says we're looking at things through a win now lens, we're looking to win, that is code for we don't want any more rookies. And so I find it very hard to believe the Magic are looking to package their 2 picks to try and move up. Even if it's a moderate move up to like 11, 10, 9 to get like a Kasper Siakashonis. Kasper Siakashonis, excellent 3-point shooter. The percentages don't show that, but he's, I think, widely considered one of the better shooters in this draft. 6'6", plays the point guard, played point guard at Illinois. Good shooter, good scorer, good passer. Just we'll see if that translates to the NBA. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick. There's people who want the Magic to, there's a lot of people saying, oh, the Magic should trade for the number 2 pick and go get Dylan Harper. And look, the Magic need stability. They need calm. They need presence. Drafting a rookie point guard or trading up to get a rookie point guard, even with how good Dylan Harper is, I don't think that's the way. So I am personally very skeptical of the Magic moving up, even if it's to like 11. I think that's where Portland's picking. Even if it's to like kind of the later lottery. What do the Magic have that those teams would want besides more draft picks? Like I mentioned, like the players later on in the draft are interesting, but imperfect. The Magic aren't selling veterans to kind of winning teams. Like Houston's sitting there at 8. I think that's 8. That might draft board from me. Houston's sitting there at 8. Do they really want another rookie? They couldn't play Reed Shepherd last year. Would they trade back for 2 picks? Probably not. But would you be able to trade 16 or 25 and a player, maybe like a Jonathan Isaac for 8? Sure. Would I do that? No. Unless that guy at 8 is the guy you really, really want. I would say this, maybe you think the Magic need a center and Cayman Malawak is your guy or Derek Queen is your guy. I'm not sold on either. I think a rookie center would not be great for this team, especially considering like if Wendell Carter is still your starter, maybe you want them in reserve so that you feel comfortable trading Wendell Carter in a couple of years, but Wendell Carter is still your starter. You're going to need to have a guy ready to start for 20 games behind him. Mo Wagner's out until December. So whoever you're picking as that kind of emergency replacement center has to be ready to play backup center to start the year because Mo Wagner's not coming back till Christmas. But yeah, put Cayman Malawak, put Derek Queen on the list. The guy that I would consider trading up for, the guy that I think is the big, and I've seen some Magic fans suggest going after Asa Newell, good defender, literally like a Jonathan Isaac clone, not as long, not as good defensively. But you can look at Asa Newell from Georgia as a potential option. A lot of Magic fans like Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma, another high scoring point guard, not much of a playmaker, not much of a distributor. I'm not big in on him. I'm not big in on Trey Johnson. Again, like I want a veteran point guard. I don't think the Magic need a rookie point guard as a starter. If there is one player that I would trade up for, if there's one guy that I think like that's the guy I want if I'm moving up in this draft, Con Canopel of Duke. This kid is the definition of what the Magic are looking for. He averaged only 14.4 points per game, loaded Duke roster, of course, 2.7 assists per game, whatever. He shot 40.6% from 3 on 5.6 attempts per game. So not the volume you're necessarily looking for. Like Walter Clayton's at 6-7 threes per game. But very clearly he can put up threes and he can make them. And obviously part of his role was to be a spot up shooter around Cooper Flagg and around some of the other options that Duke has. Duke is a loaded team. But this is why I like Canopel really a whole lot. What I think the Magic need more than anything else is guys who understand their role, but when they're hot or when guys are injured, can move up a role. We could talk about all the needs the Magic have, and like shooting's big on that list, point guard's big on that list. I think the biggest need is offensive versatility and more offensive role versatility. Guys who are comfortable playing off the ball, playing off Paolo and Franz. But when they need to, they can go get their own shot. Like that's the appeal of Walter Clayton, right? He can go get his own shot at any time. Con Canopel stood out because of that 28-point showing against Georgia Tech in the ACC tournament when Flagg was out. He had 7 games this season of 20 points or more, including against Arizona and Alabama, 2 top teams in college basketball. Knoepel will be a great role player. But what I like about him and why I think he's a little bit underrated in this draft, I've seen him go in like 8, 9, 10. And look, if he's there at 8 or 9, like I'm making a call at least. Now, I don't know if the Magic want to pay that price, but again, I'd rather have Colin Knoepel than Walter Clayton. Like, I like Walter Clayton a lot. I'd rather have Colin Knoepel. I think you're crazy if you don't believe that. Trading up is going to be hard. Trading up is just going to be hard because the Magic have other fish to fry. Like, they got other needs. They can't spend their spending money on a draft pick. Like, look, if the Magic have X amount of dollars that they can spend or assets that they can spend this offseason, they got to spend it on the on the starter level player or the 6-man level player that they probably need. They can't spend it on a rookie. Even one that seems like a pretty good fit. The Magic are trying to win. And so I do think the Magic are ultimately going to stand pat. I think they will look very heavily at Walter Clayton or otherwise pick one of those kind of rangy wings. I don't see them going after the centers in this draft. I am not a big Danny Wolf fan. I'll probably do a whole episode on the centers explaining why I'm not a huge fan of this center crop in this draft. Look, I like Malawak. I like Queen. I think they're also not quite what the Magic are looking for either. Malawak probably closer than Queen, but we'll get to that as we get deeper into this draft process. We got 6 weeks of this, 5 weeks of this now before the draft. The Magic, again, I want to make this clear. The Magic have options. I'm usually down on drafts. I'm pretty high on this draft. This is a good draft to have two picks in. The problem is just like all the options are imperfect. And so you have to accept that imperfection and find a way to get through it. But there are options in this draft, and hopefully that is a good introduction to what we're thinking as we get to the draft. But that's good too for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all family channel podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's good for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode of Locked On Magic, we'll do a little playoff recap. Second round will be over, so we'll talk about what we learned from the second round and why I think Jamal Mosley is actually made for the playoffs. I'm going to get to that at some point next week because I see a lot of hate for Jamal Mosley, and I don't think it's deserved. We're going to get to that at some point next week, but until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.